Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Summer Readiness June Performance Stakeholder Call. My name is Brenda Corona here with the Stakeholder Affairs Group. I'll be here facilitating, helping our team from Market Analysis and Forecasting for today's call. In our panels group today, we have 3 people from Market Analysis and Forecasting, Abhishek, Amber, and Jessica. All of them will be providing analysis and help with the slides we have here today. And if you guys have any questions, we're going to go a few meeting reminders for today's call. This call is being recorded and will be posted under miscellaneous meetings. I'll send the link later in chat so you can access that quicker to visit the presentation we just posted this morning. All calls are structured to simulate any open dialogue or questions, so feel free to submit the questions that we are presenting today, or also use your raised hand and the raised hand icon that's located above your chat window. So that would be the best way for us to indicate to unmute you. Before you begin, ask your question, please state your name and organization so we can know who's speaking. If you do experience any technical issues, let me know or Luke know. That way we can help you out with your technical issues. But other than that, we hope everyone has a great discussion. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Abhishek to kick us off for the first slide.
Thank you, Brenda. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhishek Hundiwale from Market Analysis. So let me introduce this topic basically that last year we had committed to analyze the performance of the summer, obviously performance of the market for the summer. And we started off with a series of reports that we analyzed starting from June 2021 to September 2021, which is obviously the most critical month from the summer perspective. And again, this year, we've continued this effort. This is one of the series of reports that we are planning to publish, that we've already published, and we are planning to do it and continue till September. That is the next 4 series of reports that we're planning to do. Obviously, ISO does have some of the existing reports, that is monthly, weekly, and there are other forums, the MBPF. But I think we wanted to discuss this market performance in this just dedicated for summer was important because of the specific areas of interest that have been in conversation before. So that is just wanted to give you an introduction of where we are at on this. And to start with this summer, this is just a slide of summary enhancement, the summary of summer enhancements that we had in place for the summer of 2022. Relatively, the month of June was very smooth, relatively uneventful, quiet. We didn't have any issues during the month. There were several enhancements that are in place for summer 2022. Some of the enhancements that were carried over from last year, especially, for the load, export, and the wheeling priorities that had an original sunset date of May 31st, 2022. ISO was able to extend it and use that for this summer again, and now they have the new sunset date of the next year of May 2023. So it was able to use that functionality for this summer as well. There were several other enhancements that took place. Definitely, if you look to today's outlook and there were several new displays that were put forth for transparency basis, and even more information on Oasis. Like if you look at it, the EIM resource sufficiency test. We did enhance that. That went live on June 1st, 2022. That itself, that there was a lot more information that was put down on Oasis. All the capacity test information is there on Oasis. There were some slight issues with the publication of numbers on the capacity test on Oasis, but they were actually corrected later on. Back in February 2022, we had disabled the using of the uncertainty requirements in our RSE capacity test calculations. So these are some of the announcements that were going forth in for this summer. In addition, there was additional transparency on the load conformance and the reasons behind the load conformance on OSS. So that was additional information that we are trying to put. So they're just giving you a brief summary of what went in, what are the announcements that went in place for the summer 2022. Some of, I mean, as you can see, most of them are like the import market incentive during tight conditions, the management of storage resources during tight conditions, they were not triggered because of the overall conditions of June. They were lower load and pretty smooth during the month of June. That's why most of these didn't trigger at all. I'll hand it over to Jessica to go over the next slides. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Abhishek. So I'm just going to quickly go over some of the observed temperatures and load conditions for the month of June. So this is the mean temperature percentile. So this is the average temperature for the United States throughout the whole day through the whole month of June. So we saw above average, much above average, and record warmest temperatures throughout the southwestern United States. A lot of those above average temperatures were through interior California, parts of the coastal California regions, and the desert Southwest, like Arizona, saw much above average temperatures. And then parts of the central California coast also saw the record warmest June observed. So a lot of that came from a heat event that we had the second week of the month where temperatures are about 10 to 20 degrees above normal. There was also a less extreme heat event the third week of the month that was observed through much of California and parts of the desert Southwest as well. And you can see the Pacific Northwest through June saw at or below normal temperatures. So a bit opposite of what we observed in the desert Southwest. So these temperatures were above normal, but kind of nothing too extreme or significantly widespread, kind of helped to keep our loads in check for most of the month. So taking a look at the loads for June, CAISO's load peak for June was on June 27th. We peaked at about 41,363 megawatts, which was about over 3,000 megawatts below the CEC's forecast of 44,920 megawatts. The load did not exceed the monthly CEC's forecast, and our RA showings were above CAISO's load plus the required operating reserves. So as Abhishek mentioned, we didn't have any of the alerts or anything like that trigger this month since we stayed below the CEC's forecast and our RA showings were above what was needed. And with that, I will pass it back to Abhishek. Oops.
Thank you, Jessica. Can you go to the next slide, please?
Abhishek, you can actually advance the slides on your own. So please click on the middle of the screen and then use the page down key.
Okay, I didn't know that. Thank you. So June, and as we mentioned before as well, so June was pretty quiet, relatively uneventful. So we didn't have any warnings or EEAs alerts that we had. We didn't have any flex alerts during that point. There were a couple of announcements that went in last year. That is the minimum state of charge constraint, which we did not enforce. So as overall basis, as we've said, that we didn't trigger any of these alerts that was based on the tight conditions. So just that was a good sign in a way. Okay, so let me take a step back in this and see from the RA perspective, because I mean it's the reference level. What is the reference level that is coming into the day-ahead market? And just wanted to show you what the monthly RA showings for June 2022 were as compared to the June 2021 values. When you can see this is just a comparison, it is very much comparable. I mean, obviously June 2022 RA numbers were slightly higher than the last year. But when you look at by fuel type, the gas-fired resources, the RA showings, and just to remind, these are the monthly RA showings. So these are the reference levels that comes into our system, and we look at those and compare those. The gas-fired resources, we saw that there was a reduction of about 495 megawatts of gas-fired resources that had RA capacity. The major change, the major increase that we saw was for the storage resources. As expected, we saw about 1800 megawatts of RA capacity that showed up that wasn't there last year for June 2022. And as I said as well, there were some imports as well that we didn't see. There was about 1,000 megawatts of RA capacity was reduction in the RA imports as well. So just wanted to show what the comparison, what the reference level. Uh, these numbers, I mean, when you look at from the market perspective, these numbers could change because these are the monthly showing, these are the reference level that comes into, but when we get closer to the market, there could be outages, there could be derates on these resources, so those numbers could change once we go into the system, and that is what we call as an operational RA number, right? That there are some outages that come in, and that goes into the day-ahead market. We look at the market looks at the operational RA number as compared to the monthly RA showings. Okay, so from the RA perspective, this was but now from the prices perspective, the prices were relatively stable during the month. There was a price spike. Obviously, there were high prices during the June 10th event. This shows the daily distribution of the day-ahead prices, and the box plot basically shows the minimum, maximum. The box basically shows the 10th percentile and the 90th percentile, and the red dots show the average prices for the day. The typical prices were less than $200 per megawatt hour for the day, but there was one day when it went up to $270 per megawatt hour for, I think, June. It was for June 10th. If you look at the lower plot, there was that graph shows the comparison of the IFM, FMM, and RTD prices. It shows that there was some price divergence between the three markets, and these are when we talk about the prices, we talk about the DLAP prices. We take the weighted average of the DLAP prices for the day, and that is how we show the comparison, because sometimes it includes the congestion pattern as well. That is the reason we take the DLAP prices. Um, it shows some price divergence. Obviously, there are several reasons why it could have a price divergence. One of the reasons was that the RTT load demand was, especially for June 10th, the RTT demand was lower than what it came than FMM as well, and that is the reason sometimes you would see that there was slightly lower prices as compared to the other markets. Okay, so now from the RA perspective, now you have the RA capacity that is as a monthly showing, but when you look at the when that RA capacity actually goes into the day-ahead market, that is what we wanted to see. So this slide basically shows the supply bid capacity of the day-ahead supply capacity broken down by RA capacity and the above RA capacity. I wouldn't say non-RA, but it's the above RA capacity. The purple line in this represents the day-ahead load forecast plus the operating reserves, which is typically about 6% of the load. And then the dashed blue line in this particular slide shows the adjusted load forecast plus the operating reserves plus the high priority, obviously, export sales schedules, which would represent the overall need to be met in the day-ahead market. Now you could see that in this, the blue section of would have a pattern of the more of a solar pattern, because when we look at the RA capacity, especially for the solar and wind, whatever the forecasted value for the solar and wind, we take the whole of that as an RA capacity. Whereas for the gas-fired resource or the hydro resource, whatever RA capacity that they have as a monthly showing, that would be as the RA capacity in this particular. Whereas for solar and wind, we take the forecasted value, and that is why you see a pattern of the solar for every day. That is why you see that there's an increase during the middle hours of the day. Now, when we talk about the available RA capacity, this was the unavailable RA capacity. So when we talk about unavailable, this was the capacity that had a monthly showings where they said that they would show up. However, either because of an outage, because of a planned outage, or because of a forced outage, there was some capacity that could not show up in the market, and that is where we wanted to see that the comparison of the unavailable RA capacity. We took 1 hour, one peak hour, hour ending 19 for this analysis, and we wanted to show what exactly the trend of the unavailable RA capacity over the month, which is around 8 to 10% of the total RA monthly showings. So just wanted to give a reference of when you talk about RA outages as well. Just wanted to give a reference on this. So from RA perspective now, we go to the intertie schedules. The intertie schedules, basically the intertie positions are generally set from the day-ahead position. This slide gives you the intertie schedules in HAS, but whenever we talk about the intertie positions, they are generally set from day-ahead positions. The imports or the exports that are cleared in the day-ahead may tend to self-schedule into the real time to preserve the day-ahead award. However, there could be still some incremental participation in the real-time market in HAS, which would allow resources to either bid in economically, to either buy back the day-ahead position, or to have additional capacity in the real-time market. So that is what the general purpose of it. This chart gives you shows you the cleared schedules in real time for different groups. It could be dynamic, imports, wheels, exports, and it shows that the red line, it shows the net interchange schedule. You could see that the net interchange schedule was as low as about 2,000 megawatts for June 10th and 11th. It was low. That is when you saw a very high exports cleared during the time frame. That was just before the evening hours. I mean, as expected, you have excess solar supply. At that point, you could see that the exports could be cleared in the market, and that is what we saw that happening for June 10th and June 11th. I would like to stop here and ask if there are any questions.
If you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand icon. Once again, please use the raise hand icon if you would like to ask a question. At this time, we have no one in the queue.
Okay, thank you. Now, from the intertie schedules, let's look at the exports, which is it was a little bit of an interest for that as well. We wanted to see what kind of an exports was scheduled, and we wanted to see what the different types of exports and different groups that were exporting. So this gives you a variation of all the exports that are cleared in the HAS market. Obviously, we didn't take wheels exports in this because they are balanced, and we didn't want to show the wheels and increase the amount of capacity. We already have that in the report, but in this particular case, we removed the wheels from our analysis in this chart. It is showing by different groups. So TOR is basically for the exports with scheduling priorities that are associated with the transmission rights, which shows the base value, which shows in gray. Then there was another group which is called as the day-ahead PT. Those are the exports that are scheduled in day-ahead, which are coming into real time with high priority cell schedules. Similarly, there is day-ahead LPT, and those are the day-ahead schedules, export schedules, coming in with the low priority cell schedules. Similarly, you have the RTM PT and RTM low LPT, which is the high priority and the low priority, which are actually coming into the real time itself. And then there are economical exports as well that were cleared. So you could see for this particular for in this particular chart that on June 10th and 11th there was high number of exports that, as I had discussed before, that the high number of exports that were cleared, and out of that pretty much 2000 about 3000 megawatts of low priority exports were cleared for that particular day. You could see that, which is shown in the green bar. In this case, there was high amount of low priority exports that were cleared during that particular day. So just wanted to show the variation of it and see the different groups that are coming into our market in the HASP market. So this slide gives a little perspective of what happens in RUC. So this shows the lower chart on the left hand side shows the infeasibility. The infeasibility is in the RUC market, and the one on the right shows the export reduction on the right hand side. So when we talk about RUC, the RUC clears against a load forecast, which is obviously not price sensitive, but under certain conditions, RUC may relax the power balance constraint due to either a surplus or a shortfall of supply capacity. Now, infeasibility can happen in either direction. It could be could be in a positive, or it could be a negative. In hours when there are low levels of load and the minimum downward capability, RUC may observe an oversupply condition, which results in a negative infeasibility in this particular chart. However, the other way around is true as well. When you're short of load, when you're short of capacity, you would see that you would see an undersupply infeasibility and a positive case in this case. However, for the month of June, we didn't see any undersupply infeasibility. It was just the oversupply infeasibility that we saw for the month, and there are several days when we saw an oversupply feasibility that is shown as a negative in this case. As we discussed, because of the load conditions, because of the mild nature of the month, we didn't see any undersupply infeasibilities for this month. And at the same time, we didn't see a large number of export reductions that are happening as well. There were a few days, there were just June 10th and June 27th. We saw a very small volume of export reduction that is happening for economic and for the low priority exports as well. So just wanted to show how it was working. Now let's go to. Sorry, go ahead.
There's a question from John Deep from SCE. He asked if you could provide an example of what a low priority transfer is.
So a low priority, basically, there are the difference between the high priority and a low priority exports of the wheels are basically for wheel transaction, they have to register, they have to have that registration prior to the month, and that is how they get registered as a high priority. And I'll go a little bit more into the wheels when I talk about it, and that's what I was about to talk, that for high priority. But for a low priority, those are the first ones after, obviously, for the economical, when there is a reduction in exports, those are the first ones to be cut, the economical and the low priority, and that is how you get the priority level as well. Does that answer the question?
No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, let's look at the wheel transactions. With the summer announcement, as I talked about before as well, that for the summer announcement for the export loads and the wheeling priorities, that was extended to this summer as well, and we were able to extend it to the next year. Now, wheels that were seeking a high scheduling priority in the market that is equal to the ISO load as well, so that they need to register in advance for their wheel transactions. I think it's about 45 days in advance they need to register to get the high priority wheel transactions. If they are not able to register their wheel transactions, then they would be considered as a low priority wheels in this case. So this shows the wheels in the day ahead market of what the difference between the high priority, the volume of the high priority and the low priority. So for the month of June, I think there were about 742 megawatts of high priority wheels that were registered. And in this case, when you look at it, especially for June 9th, where the wheels, I think there were about 1,366 megawatts of wheels were cleared. Out of that, it was about 400 megawatts was from high priority wheels, and I think there were about 350 megawatts was from the low priority. So you could see the balance of that. There was still a high number of high priority wheels that were being cleared in the market as well. Similarly, as we saw the day ahead wheels, these are the wheels that were cleared in the HASP market. And in addition to the TOR that we discussed before, which are for transmission rights, which are scheduled for the transmission rights, there are these additional wheel transactions that you have as well, similar to what we have for exports, where it is the day ahead PT, LPT, in day ahead and in the real-time market. The wheels with high priority, that is the day ahead PT, they are cleared in the day ahead market, but they have to rebid into the real time as well. Similarly, for the day ahead LPT, that is the low priority, they are the sell schedules that are in the day ahead market, and they have to come into the real time market, and they have to rebid as well into the real time market, which is shown in green. There were a very low volume of high priority day ahead. We classify it as a day ahead high priority wheels that were cleared on June 22nd and June 25th, but pretty much most of them were the high priority wheel transactions that were bidding directly into the real time market, which is shown in orange. That is what the trend that you see in the market. Now, from the wheels, we get into the RA inputs. So there are these static imports that are in the market, and we would classify these static imports as RA imports when they are related to LSEs, and especially for this analysis. Let me take a step back. Okay, for this analysis, we have taken all the RM imports that were associated with LSEs under only CPUC's jurisdiction. I think there was some discussion about it, and we wanted to analyze it and see how many RA inputs are in the CPUC jurisdiction and LSEs related to that as well. So we took all the LSEs that were in the CPU jurisdiction and saw if they had any RA capacity imports or not. This shows the approximately supply bids in the day ahead market and in the real time market that are associated to RA static imports. Only for hours 17 to 21. Obviously, we just wanted to see during the peak hours how they are behaving and what kind of pattern do we have. Are they all of them as RA capacity, or do we get anything above RA capacity or not? That is what our premise for analysis was. So these are organized for the day ahead market and for the real time. These are organized by the price range, and it includes the sell schedules, and it also distinguishes between RA capacity and above RA capacity. Now, based on this subset, basically, when you look at the day ahead, basically all of the RA capacity is either bidding in at zero, is either sell schedule, or they're bidding it at below $0 per megawatt hours. Similarly, for real time, all of the RA capacity is bidding it as a sell schedule. That is what we have seen so far, especially for day ahead market. In the upper right corner of the chart, we see there are some economical inputs. There are some economical that we have classified as above RA. So to classify an RA input as an RA capacity and above RA capacity, that is what we've done our analysis, and we've looked at what capacity that they're bidding into, and anything above that would be as an above RA classification in our case. Most in day ahead, we saw some economical bids, but however, in real time, on the left-hand side, in the left-hand chart, we didn't see a high number of economical bids for RA imports or above RA. Most of the RA imports were self-scheduled in the real-time market. So from Interties, I wanted to discuss maybe a little bit of change of topic on this on the storage side. So this shows the performance of the storage resources. We have discussed the performance of storage resources for the month of June. We have discussed this similar charts, obviously, at various other forums in the monthly reports in the MPPF as well. So this is one such slide where you look at the status charge in the real-time market for all the storage resources and the awards that are in the real-time market. The top left hand, the top chart in this case, there was a different color in this chart from hour ending 18 to 22, just to show what happens during the peak hours. And as you can see, there is a box plot. As you can see that during the the box plot, basically it shows that the box represents a 25th and the 75th percentile of the schedules, and where you can see that they are being discharged from the top corner, from the top chart. You can see that they are being discharged during those intervals when there are high energy prices, that is during the peak hours from 18 to 22. As well, you can see over here in the bottom chart, which shows the state of charge for the storage resources. You can see that they keep on charging, and they reach up to the peak till about hour ending 17, and then they slowly discharge during the evening peak hour, during the late peak hours, that is from 18 to 24. That is when you see a discharge and get the maximization from the prices because of the high prices that you see during those evening peak hours as well. So that is what we have trend. That is the trend that we have seen during an analysis as well. To add to this, I just wanted to let everyone know that our group has been planning to publish an exclusive day-ahead energy storage report as well, a daily energy storage report as well that we are planning to publish starting next week, and that would include the bid-in capacity, the awards, the procurement of energy and AS for IFM and real-time market. And this would include for storage resources and for hybrid resources as well. So we'll send out a market notice next week, but we are planning to do that starting next week, and see. Probably you can have a look at it and see if you have any other questions on that as well. And this is the last slide that I have. This is basically the total market cost. We have gone through this slide at different forums and in the monthly report and in the MPPF as well. These are the total settlement costs that we see across, that is attributed to the demand. And for the month of June, you can see that it pretty much follows. Whenever you see an increase in demand, you would see obviously the higher cost, especially from June 9th, 10th, and 11th. You see that the total cost, settlement costs were a little higher than other days. So these costs includes all the energy cost from the day-ahead market, from the real time. It includes the congestion offset, includes the imbalance offset. So all the costs are inclusive in this, and this is what we wanted to show the variations over the month of when it was high, and the average cost was about $86 per megawatt hour for the month. So just wanted to show what the difference and how it is showing up as compared to the other days, as peak and the other days as well. This is what I have. Just wanted to show what the summer performance was for the month of June. It was relatively quiet. We didn't have any other than eventful issues for the month. So that's it. What we have. Does anyone have questions?
If you would like to ask a question, please use the raise hand icon located on the bottom of your WebEx screen, or please submit your questions in the chat.
We do have a question submitted by C.D. McLean from CEC. On slide 6, can someone confirm that the June 27th low peak remains the peak to date for summer 2022? If not, I would appreciate knowing the date in July, which is now represents the system peak year to date.
This is Amber. We can take that one back and get back to you. I don't remember if we went over that in July or not and what the number is. We can take that one back, and it will be in the July report as well.
Great, thanks. So anyone who would like to raise your hand, please use the virtual hand icon. If not, feel free to submit through chat. I'll go to the next slide just to give everyone a quick reminder. Our Stakeholder Symposium for this year taking place at the Safe Credit Union Convention Center in downtown Sacramento, November 9th and 10th. Register today so you can take advantage of that early bird discount. We also provide sponsorship opportunities for those who would like to promote their organization. So at this time, we so far have 3 sponsors that we have been part of the symposium. So feel free to start looking into that if you'd like to be part of the sponsorship program that we have at the symposium. But if not, if there are any questions, I will send it back to Luke, my event producer, to close the meeting.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using Event Services. You may now disconnect.